I have help this morning. I offer this to you in the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. Please be seated. So we hear the story. Jesus and his disciples come to Jericho. It's an oasis, really, of sorts. It's a prosperous town in a low land, a fertile valley of the Transjordan, a farming community, plenty of vineyards, and a fine place for refreshment after the dry trudge across the hard, rocky, barren lands that they have been going through on their way. It's a refreshing place to renew and sustain, and that is because after you leave here, the upward journey to Jerusalem, through the dangers of the hills there on the way to the holy city, it's a rough go, and Lord knows Jerusalem itself holds some real perils for Jesus. So there they are in Jericho, a middle of the road, middle class, midway point to set a spell in the midlife of their journey towards faith and holiness, a journey that is strenuous for body and spirit. So here they are in Jericho, bit of an oasis. And perhaps there are those who came to stop in Jericho or reside in Jericho and never took another step forward. Because leaving here, one emerges from the trees and the citrus groves and the intimacy of a small town and the relatively cool air, and you emerge into a world of rock and dust. So leaving here takes disciplined willingness. So Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd, well, they're disciplined and they're willing, and they leave Jericho, a large crowd. Well, that's good. Mutual encouragement, safety in numbers, because winding up the Roman military road, it's the most sensible way to go to the Holy Land, to the Holy City, because it is patrolled and it affords the best chance for a safe journey. Because remember, the Jericho road is the same road where Jesus sets the story of the Good Samaritan who stops and helps the guy who gets jumped on this very road. So it's a perilous way. So Jesus and his friends and followers set out together with great purpose, because it is of note that all of this happens at the time of the Passover, the pilgrim festival, when every Jewish male is required to go up to Jerusalem to celebrate the holy festival of the Passover in the temple, and those who go can bring their families. So this is a crowd on a religious mission, quite independent of Jesus' arrival and departure. One could even say that he joins the crowd rather than that the crowd joins him. So there they are, off they go. You can imagine the sounds of the travel. I mean, that many feet in random order, stomping away, conversations, maybe a song to keep you going, trying to keep track of children, keep track of animals, maybe a little laughter as you're on your way. And then there's the sights and the feeling of spring weather, the fine adornments of those who are well-to-do, and the plain clothing and accoutrements of those who are more middle class, the basic simplicity of the rest, and all the way the dust rising and falling as you go. It's settling upon you. For how many this pilgrimage walk was a matter of sacred duty, who knows? For how many it's just a matter of habit and decorum, could be. For some, though, traveling with Jesus is the main attraction, for 12 of them at least. The ones who know him well, or think they do, who recognize him for who he actually is, insofar as they have figured that out so far. And then we come to Bartimaeus, a blind beggar sitting by the roadside. How long he has been sitting there, Who can tell? On that particular spot, that particular road, who can say? But what one can say is that he would not have been alone. We can be sure of that because those who are dependent on the alms and the offerings of others, of people passing by, the general public, such as those who have been sidelined by life generally speaking, find themselves a good sideline along a well-traveled road. Because though he may be a beggar, as may be the others, you need not be a fool, and why not take advantage of the gleanings of a purposeful, proper liturgical procession? So imagine the surge when some of them hear that Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. But when Bartimaeus hears that, he hears more than Jesus' name and his hometown. So in this, perhaps we should all aspire to be Bartimaeus. Because he can see what we, distracted with all our needs and wants of life in general can be, might not see. His insight perceives the holy light of God clearly. Sometimes maybe we only see it reflected or refracted, glinting off a truth we experience from time to time. The light of Christ may be more flickering than a constant beam. But to Bartimaeus, that light is unmistakable, and it has a proper name above them all, which he shouts out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. He's hushed. All the louder he shouts out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. There is an African proverb that says, it is not how you call me that matters. What matters is what I answer to. Jesus, Son of David. Bartimaeus names the man from Nazareth in his messianic calling. He names him Son of David, the Messiah. And so here in a gospel where so often people are silenced, Jesus stood still and lets Bartimaeus speak up. And so Bartimaeus stumbles out of anonymity and into our awareness and is soon face to face with Jesus. And were he asking for money or food or a healing just to see, the name by which he calls him would not matter at all. But what he asks for from Jesus, Son of David, is mercy. And mercy is that which is uniquely God's to give. Call him here, Jesus says. And those flummoxed souls who were trying to get Bartimaeus to pipe down now have to pick him up and say, take heart. What wonderful words for anyone who has ever felt sidelined and beyond the reach of grace and blessing. Take heart, come up, for Jesus is calling you. And then there's this great dramatic moment where Bartimaeus throws off his cloak, springs up, makes his way with sort of reckless abandon to Jesus. And there really isn't much gracefulness in this, because really, this is a long cloak he would have had, and he would have held up the hem to hold sort of a pocket for the money or food or anything that anyone might give to him. All passersby might drop into that sort of sack. So there he is. He throws off his cloak, throwing coins, food, whatever, everywhere it goes. His cloak lands in the dust, and there he is, ill-clad, possibly naked, running all the way through, careening through the crowd, because he wants to get to Jesus, the one he thinks is the Son, the promised one. And the juxtaposition of these two men face to face calls up quite an image, doesn't it? It's just all honesty, all no inhibition. And we might think of Bartimaeus, when we read him in the Bible, as just another other to appreciate, but not an identity to aspire to. Yet there is inspiration to be found in the one who dumped everything he had in a heartbeat, all the concerns of the world just dropping from him, and bounds forward to Jesus' invitation with no hesitation, no shame, just naked need, presenting to Jesus just his own sweet Bartimaeus self, because his own sweet Bartimaeus self is all that Jesus is calling forward. I think that's an excellent way to come to Jesus. So then Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" He asks because he's interested. "My Lord, let me see again." And there have been miracles at Jesus' hands in the gospel before, spontaneous restorations of health when persons cried out for healing. Only here is the physical healing the response to a call for mercy. Mercy. It is a specific request, and it has a little edge to it when Bartimaeus asks. It is a scriptural term. It is a religious term. Mercy and loving kindness describe the covenant relationship that God has made between God and God's people. So for Bartimaeus in his time and his culture and religious sensibility, let's say, mercy is not a pastoral warm fuzzy. It's not something that the giver feels. Mercy is something that happens, that changes things, that puts some balance back into one's being. And maybe some people have forgotten it, but to Bartimaeus, mercy is a living promise to whom he has gone and gotten real proximate, and who's calling him, to whom he's run, throwing off his only meaningful possessions, which really maybe he should have kept hold of. I mean, honestly, just in case. But nope, there he is, himself, out of breath, aimed at his hope in anticipation of mercy, of healing, of real transformation. Because when you come in full faith to Jesus, Son of David, the Holy One of God, seeking mercy, seeking the covenant commitment of relationship of God to you and you to God, there's nothing you can do but just throw your whole self into it. Because the Holy One is seeking you, just you, exactly as you are. So throwing your whole self into it, there really isn't an option. Not for the seeker and not for the Savior. Jesus and Bartimaeus publicly positioned for Jesus to live up to his calling as the Son of David, the Holy One of God. And for Bartimaeus to live up to his calling. So Bartimaeus may not seem like an obvious choice for a model disciple, but this story of healing is more than the story of a miracle. It's a story of a call that calls to all of us. Because when he calls out Jesus, Son of David, he calls him Messiah. And when Jesus throws off everything else and claims Jesus as his Messiah, Bartimaeus has committed himself to that discipleship. If Bartimaeus had asked for his sight, again, just so he could get back into the fast lane, I wonder what would have become of him. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't need to know. Where does it ever lead for anyone to have sight but no insight? It's lovely to have perfect 20/20, but for spiritual people, what's called for is vision. And Bartimaeus has it inside and out. The blind man embodies wisdom and insight the rest of us can aspire to. And when his eyes are healed, he is free to go wherever he chooses, yet he sees his way clear to go just one way, with Jesus, the Son of David. That way, the way. Healed eyes give him freedom to follow the way of discipleship that his inner vision has already seen and shown the way. Shall we aspire to see as Bartimaeus does? Shall we uncloak ourselves, put our own sweet selves right before Jesus with longing and calling for mercy in naked need, expecting that there is something within us that can be healed, and the gift of that mercy be our motivation to serve? Throw our whole selves into it. Bartimaeus made a spectacle of himself to show us the way of faith. So, shall we follow?